Welcome, everyone. Today we have Sally Lotz joining us. Sally is a courageous cult survivor. Her childhood had many strict rules and limitations imposed when her family converted to the Jehovah's Witnesses. So she found in this oppressive environment, she endured abuse from her stepfather that forced her to shut down her true self and literally just become invisible as a way of surviving. Sally's journey really touched my heart, and it's a testament to the power that survivors find with finding their voice and also using it to empower others. And today, Sally is an author. She's a writing coach and a mentor. And she writes, "It took me a long time to find my passion and place in this world. I grew up in a well-known doomsday cult, the Jehovah's Witnesses. I was kicked out of the house at age 16 for having a boyfriend. However, my stepfather, who was abusive in all forms, was never even punished or reported to the police. I wrote a young adult novel, my fourth book about it, and it's called The Truth is a Lie. While the story is fictional, it's based on my life in the cult and my family life, which sadly is incredibly common for the cult. I found my passion as a writer in my 40s and managed to write 3 picture books, even though I have ADHD and mild form of dyslexia. And my life has been one of survival and moving towards a goal. I've had to restart my life 3 times. My message is one of hope and promise. Sometimes you have to make big shifts in your life to become what you are meant to be. It may mean divorce. It was true for me, stepping out of your comfort zone every day and leaning into your dreams all day, every day." And I just think Sally's journey just stands as a testament of the power available to all of us in finding our voice and using it to assist and inspire others, and really just show that resilience and sharing our unique testimonies. So welcome, Sally. It's so lovely to have you here.
Hi, thank you. I was like, were you talking about me?
I
I was listening. I'm like, wait, I wrote that.
know you're like, I did all of that. And we were just chatting before we started actually, and it's your book anniversary almost, isn't it?
Yes, May 1st, which it's already May 1st where you are, is my
It's
book
here.
anniversary. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's
So
amazing.
thank you. Thank you.
I think I
Thank
just
you.
I have so much admiration for survivors like yourself that are speaking out, when it's against institution, and there's so much indoctrination and so much mind control of the members within that institution. I can only imagine how difficult it is to kind of break
Mhm.
away and actually be able to share your story and even find healing, because obviously when you go against the status quo, that tends to mean that you get gaslit and excluded. So yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
just begin with just you've got quite a unique entry point into the job of businesses, because your family started
Uh,
not as part of it at all, which is quite interesting, and actually in your
no.
lifetime decided to move in. So yeah, I'd love to just hear about how that experience was like, being within a family that decided to move really into a cult, unknowingly, I'm guessing as well.
Yeah, unknowingly, but also at the same time, they answered a problem my mother was having,
Mm.
which is what they do when you're in a cult. They give you a solution that's too good to be true. But my mom at the time, she had just broken up with my father. I'm child number 5, and she took me and my sister and the man that she had an affair with, and we moved cross country. We moved from San Diego to Chicago, and I can't but help but think that my mom had a lot of probably remorse. She had a lot going on through her head of like, why did I destroy my family? Why did I do this? And our neighbor showed up one day and just took my mom under her wing as a young mother at the time, um, and just showed her all this kindness. And the next thing I know, I'm hearing, and I'm 6 at the time, I should have said, I'm 6 years old. The next thing I'm hearing is, we're not having Christmas anymore. we're not having birthdays anymore because Jehovah doesn't like them. And I'm like, who's this Jehovah? I don't even know what you're talking about. And so that was a very big shift in my little world, because here I would go to school and I would go to little classroom parties. That's what we have here in the States. We have birthday parties for each child when it's their birthday. We would have Valentine's Day parties, Halloween, Christmas, every Easter, we would have a little party in the classroom. So I went from this little joyous, cute little childhood to Jehovah hates you if you do that, and you're going to die in Armageddon. That's literally what my mother told me. I can clearly remember friends' parents calling and inviting me to birthdays, and my mom would just berate them on the phone. Like, how dare you invite my daughter to a birthday party? We are Jehovah's Witnesses, and we do not believe in birthdays. We do not celebrate them, And I was like, I'm 6. I'm thinking, God, you're overreacting just a little bit, right? Can't you just say no? Um, so I had a hard time with that because I didn't understand how God could hate you for celebrating your birthday. After all, he created you, right? And how could he hate you for Christmas, or how could he hate you for, you know, just for being happy, basically? Um, so I was probably about 7. It took a little while because Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't let you go to their kingdom halls right away. You have to study for a while before they actually let you come, which that's weird, but
How long is how long is that for?
you don't
Or
get
selling?
invited until they deem their Bible student necessary. So at this time, my mom was still a Bible student. She had not gone through their books of study with them and learned everything she needed to know. So that's their kind of form of indoctrination when they grab you and you seem to be interested in what it is they're selling. In this case, my mom was told she's going to see her mother again. Her mother passed away when she was a child.
Okay, yeah.
And so then there's book studies. There's not a Bible study. They study their book. And then they slowly show you the friends and family members you have are going to turn against you for following Jehovah. So you need to cut them out of your life. And they start just indoctrinating you. And when they see you're at a point where, okay, they're ready, they invite you to come to the Kingdom Hall, because that's a culture shock. You can't just walk in.
That's interesting, isn't it? Like they isolate the person really, kind of dividing them off from family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sounds like they've got this period where they're kind of split off from their friends and family, their whole support, before they actually go into the Kingdom Hall, the full blown
Yeah.
Jehovah Witnesses. And I suppose by then you potentially upset your family and friends. You've crossed the line with them and really isolated yourself, and you probably feel like I guess I've just got to stay. Like it's so much mind control there, isn't there?
It is, but the isolation, you don't realize it because what you're told is your family and friends are going to go against you because we have the truth. And we know when you have the truth that they don't like it. And so that's the devil attacking you. That's what they tell you. And so they've love bombed you. They've told you how much unconditional love they have for you and how they're going to help you. And doing all these steps, you're going to live in life in paradise for eternal life. But you cannot just walk into a kingdom hall, because if you knew all of the rules when you walked in, you would leave. So they have very
Wow.
much got all of these steps in place um, of how to groom somebody to become a Jehovah's Witness. Um, so my first foray into going to the Kingdom Hall, they do not call themselves a church, by the way, because the churches are Christendom. Christendom is Babylon the Great. It's the devil. So they do not want to be associated with the church. So they call themselves the Kingdom Hall. My mom said, we're going to go to the Kingdom Hall on Saturday. That's when our meeting was. I said, oh, great. I was really excited because I was thinking we were going to church. I was like, a pew, a stained glass window, singing, some little old lady playing piano. I don't know. Um, you know, a kids' church, we get to have, snacks, and no, that's not
Uh,
what it was. And I was so disappointed. We got there, it was literally this ugly building with no windows, like a prison. And everybody sat in one big room. There's no windows, no decorations. And at this time, the chairs we had were all just folding chairs that were hard. And children were expected to sit still and sit and listen to 2 hours of whatever the preaching was.
wow.
And there's a lot of kids getting smacked, a lot of kids getting dragged out and getting smacked in the back room. And just like, no, you got to sit here, you know. So that was my experience. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is.
What an oppressive environment to walk into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying you can't just walk in off the street. You would be shocked. It's a culture shock. Um, so, I don't know. We went for a while. And they had 3 meetings a week at the time when I was a kid. So you were expected to attend every meeting. It was a Tuesday night, a Friday night, and a Sunday morning when I was a kid. Um, so not only do you go to these meetings, but you have to prepare for the meetings. You have to read whatever book that they're going to go over and be prepared to answer questions. But you can't answer the questions in your own words. You have to answer them out of the book.
Oh, wow.
If you answer in your own words, you're going to get, talked to, or they might just tell you to be quiet and they'll ask somebody else the question. But you have to prepare for that. So if you can imagine a young mother with, now at this time I had a little sister, three kids, 3 young girls, going to 3 meetings a week, which were each 2 hours long in the evenings or Sunday morning, and then preparing for each of those. And that's at least 6 hours there, and then preparing with the children. And not only that, you have to go dressed in very nicely dressed. You can't, women at this time, they've changed that rule, but at that time had to wear dresses and had to be modest, pantyhose, slips, you know, and you were expected that your children were the same and that your husband was the same, that you took care of all that. So that's a lot of pressure on a woman to perform all those duties and frowned upon and talked to if her skirt's a little bit too short or her shoes are a little bit too high or she has a little bit too much makeup on. She's corrected, often in front of other people.
What a grooming process, just of
Mm-hmm.
making people kind of fit into their ideal of what they want them to be. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that they have a book, like they so they don't, because I'm not overly familiar with the Jehovah Witness I guess doctrine you would call it. So how,
Mm-hmm.
like, for people that are just trying to understand how they differ from a church
From
or
From Christianity or from a church? Okay. So for the most part, when they go knocking on doors or they're standing on street corners now, they offer free Bible studies. But if you look at what all the information they have, they don't have any Bibles. It's all of their literature. All of their literature and all their Bibles are printed by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. They're written by the leadership of their organization. But the book that they used at the time that my mom was entering was called The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life. So it was a little blue book, and I think they've changed that. They use something different now. But whatever book they're using, everybody across the globe, when they're out preaching or having Bible students, and I say that loosely because they're not studying the Bible, they use the same book. So I don't know what it is now, but when I was a child, it was called The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life. Um, and another point, too, for people who may not be really aware, whenever you walk into a Kingdom Hall, strangers don't just walk in off the street, first of all, like you do in a regular church, right? You can visit a church on Sunday and just be right at home. They are preaching the same message in every single Kingdom Hall across the globe. All of the leaders who are preaching are given the material to read, and they can put their own personality into it, but they cannot change the message. Everybody is hearing the same message across the globe, no matter what language they're speaking or what country they're in. I don't know any churches like that.
That's just such a huge organizational effort, really, isn't it? Like to even think of that. Yeah, and how deceiving too, because I mean, my experience of Jehovah Witnesses is literally them knocking on the door and trying to give you books, sell you books, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have never have guessed that they weren't even using any sort of Bible at all, that it was all their own created material.
They do use a Bible, but it's been heavily altered.
Mm.
And you bring up a good point too when they're knocking on your door or they're standing out there with their little carts. That's required. And when I was a child, there was a certain number of hours and you had to record it I thought it was every week, but somebody corrected me that it's every month. You have to turn in a certain number of hours based upon the level of that you promised that you would do. So there's some people who do 20 hours a week of that preaching. And so
And even
they
as
just want to get the message out. And if you say no, then you're dying in Armageddon. For me as a child, I was taught that your salvation was in my hands. If I did not go out and talk to people and tell them about Jehovah, they would die in Armageddon and it would be my fault. I was 6, right?
what a religious spirit, right? Like it's just such a fearful message, and you can see how like would be so easy once you get into this community to just feel so much pressure to stay, to keep up with what they're asking, because every time you don't meet a certain standard, it's like, oh, people are going to go to hell, there's going to be bad things happening, you're not going to make it. Like it's just
Right.
overwhelming, like for a child.
Exactly. I didn't choose it. That's the thing, but this was my life. And um, you are so ingrained and so indoctrinated, somebody can tell you the sky is blue and you'll look at it and go, no, it's red. And you can argue with them for days and they'll still say, it's like sometimes the mind is just blind to reality. I don't know. Some people are just so closed off that they can't see the level of deception because they want to believe in it so badly. And they've been trained for so many years to think that this is the truth. It's sad.
And I'm just imagining, like, for families that have been within this cult for generations, it would be really difficult for them to realize, because number one, they're so isolated from the rest of the world by the sounds of it as well. And whenever you come across anyone else, you're just saving them. You're saving them from going to hell. So anything that they suggest to you, you're just like, oh, I've got to save this rather than taking it on. It's just evil.
They don't, and they don't believe in heaven or hell. They only believe in paradise on earth after Armageddon. So God is going to destroy, this is why they're a doomsday cult. God is going to destroy the whole entire world and everybody who does not believe in him. And only those who are going to live are those who follow the truth.
Their truth.
The truth. They call it the truth. Yeah. So that in itself is, that's why I call them a doomsday cult, because they're waiting for the world to end so that they can live in paradise. I can't tell you how many times I've heard my brother-in-law say, I can't wait for this world to be over so we could be in paradise. And I would just look at him and I go, so you want me to die? And he would roll his eyes. I go, well, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, so you want me to die and my family? And he's like, no, I didn't say that.
Yeah. So easy to go along with something, isn't it? Until someone points out, okay, what does that actually mean?
Yeah. I'm just like, what are you saying? Think about what you're saying. Yeah.
And I know as part of your experience of leaving, like you actually ran into a lot of, I guess, oppression and indoctrination of the elders when you were sort of pointed out as a teenager as having a boyfriend that wasn't a Jehovah Witness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love you to just cover that, because it's just so oppressive. Like, just to think of a child growing up in that kind of environment is just overwhelming.
It was very oppressive. Every decision for my life was made for me, from the socks I would wear to my toothbrush to I was not allowed to do school sports. I was not allowed to do music. I was not allowed to do anything but go to school and come home and do whatever Jehovah wanted me to do. And I also had an extremely abusive stepfather, which we talked about at the beginning, and my mother was also abusive. There was no outlet for me or my siblings. So I think I was about 15, and I met a boy in my art class, and I really knew at that time, like, I really liked him, but I knew it would be impossible for me to have any relationship with him because I couldn't go to the school dances, and I was a little, or I couldn't go on dates or anything. So I was a little afraid to tell him. But I finally told them, look, I like you too, but I can't go anywhere with you. I can't go on dates. Go, I can't go see you play sports. And he was like, that's okay. Well, I'll see you at school, and we'll walk home together and we'll pass notes. And I was like, okay. We didn't have cell phones. This was in the 80s. Okay. So we would pass notes like over the back fence. So it was very innocent, and somebody saw, and somebody reported me. Now,
Wow.
keep in mind, my stepfather, who was a pedophile, had been reported many times to the elders. And each time he would say he was sorry, and they would go, okay, we'll leave it in Jehovah's hands. They would send him home. I know one time he beat my mom, and she went in and reported it. And they said, don't say anything because they'll take your kids from you. Don't go to the police. Just go home. You must have done something wrong. You must have done something wrong. And the other thing with the witnesses, and this kind of plays a part into my story, is they have something called the 2-witness rule. You cannot go to the elders and report somebody doing something wrong to you unless you have 2 witnesses. And then you have to confront the person who did it. So imagine a woman who's getting beaten by her husband. She has to have 2 people see her, and they have to all go together and they have to confront the person. All that person has to say is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And it's over. So what woman, what child is going to go through that process? Or what man? If there's a man who's being, I've heard of men being harmed by their wives. Who's going to go through that process? And they don't go to the police because it's very indoctrinated into their whole belief system. You will lose your entire family. You will lose all your friends. You will be disfellowshipped and you will lose everything. So it's very fear-based. So for me, as a 15-year-old, somebody was able to tell on me. I was called into the elders by myself at age 15. They sat me down in this little room, closed the door, and these 3 men questioned me for about an hour. Very sexually explicit questions. They wanted to know what I'd done, what I'd let him touch, where I'd gone, I was like, I just clammed up because in my head, I was already out. I was like, the Jehovah is a lie. He's not real. And I have a monster at home and you guys don't care. And I'm literally walking in a hallway holding hands at school with a boy, and I'm getting in trouble. So my inner Sally just I'm done.
I love that. I
I'm
just love
done.
that there was just that part of you that was just like, no, I'm
I was
out.
like, I didn't know how to get out of this, because I was, I'm still a kid, right? So when I got home, my mom said, well, you need to make a choice. You need to choose between that boy or Jehovah. And I looked her square in the face and I went, all that's going through my mind is, you have a monster in our house.
Yeah.
We literally have a monster in our house and you could care less. I said, I choose the boy.
Yeah.
And her face just dropped. Like she was like, I can't believe that you chose the boy. Like, well, now what am I going to do? So she said I had to leave because I was a bad influence on my younger sisters.
Wow. At 15 years,
So at this time I was 16.
16.
Yeah, I was 16. So thankfully I had a father who was not a Jehovah's Witness. However, I never really spent time with him because remember, I was isolated.
You'd moved across the
He,
country as well, right? So it was,
yeah, but by this time though, we had moved back to we'd moved back to Northern California. But my dad was in the Navy and he was often at sea and he was deployed. And at this time he was deployed. So I actually had to stay in the home for a month where nobody talked to me. I would get up, I would go to school, come home. My mom would follow me to school in her car, and sometimes she would pick me up on my little sister's bicycle. I was in high school, and she would follow me home on a bicycle
wow.
until I was able to go live with my dad. And now there's a lot of stories I hear from kids who don't have that, and they end up, if they don't have any relatives who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, they literally end up on the street.
So tough, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
because it's such a huge thing to obviously say I'm out of a family, like go you for doing that at 16 years of age. But like if you don't have an adult or someone else to go to stay with at that stage, like what are your
right,
choices? And yeah, I was going to
right.
ask you, like, do you believe your mum was completely aware of like the abuse that was
Oh, oh,
family?
100%. My mom 100% knew, and she knew other people because my stepfather was a pedophile and he was prolific. I heard stories from other people later on that I didn't know about. At the time, I just thought it was isolated with our home. But, and I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know because I was isolated, right? She 100% knew. And she was almost participatory. That's how much she knew.
Wow, Sally.
And, I say I made the decision to leave, but that wasn't easy to do. I left, but I still had family trauma. I had emotional trauma. I had religious trauma. I had all that stuff, and I never dealt with it. Oh, I did eventually because it reared its ugly head, but
That's what it does. If
it's
we don't deal with it, eventually it's like,
yeah.
here you
So
go.
people would always say you're so strong, and I would say I'm not. I'm dying inside. You have no idea, you know. But I guess I am strong because I didn't end up hurting myself. I didn't end up, living on the streets or anything like that or becoming addicted to drugs or alcohol. It's because I'm too cheap.
And other things to spend your money
I'm
on.
too cheap. Yeah, I can't spend my money on that. Um, but yeah, so it took a long time. It took a long time. I would deal with one thing and then it was like, oh, I dealt with the religious trauma, but I didn't deal with the childhood trauma.
There's so many layers, I think, especially when there's
Yeah.
religious or well, you've literally had a religious institution involved, the family abuse, and then the actual, sexual and physical violence as
Yeah.
well. So like there's so many layers
Yeah.
to pull back and find healing for. And I think, to get out of a situation like that, you do go into survival mode, like you would have had to push through it. You're going against your whole family, etc. And then yeah, it sort of gets to the point like, okay, now I've actually got to go back and heal those
Yeah.
places that I just got by with. So yeah, I would love to ask, how it was, because I imagine your family's been very divided, and probably remains very divided from all this. Like,
Hmm.
how has it been kind of creating boundaries for yourself? Because I think that's so important for the healing process. And yeah, like for survivors, or perhaps for anyone listening that is still being accessed by a similar religious cult group, like what could you, sort of say of your journey about creating safety and boundaries and a space to heal in?
Yeah, it's interesting because my family will still talk to me, but very sparingly. And now that since my book came out, no, they don't talk to me at all because I was never baptized. So there's still hope for me. But for me, for boundaries, I tried for a long time to have a relationship with my mom, but because you want that, right? And it took me a long time to discover that that's not healthy for me because she's never going to be accepting of me. There's always going to be something wrong with me in her eyes. And she'll tell me. So um and the fact that she still has denies that she ever did anything wrong and she's never said she's sorry. It's in Jehovah's hands, or oh, I didn't know any better, or oh, this or that. And I was like, all you got to do is say you're sorry, you know, and try to mend. And so for myself, I just can't put myself there anymore. And so I don't have that relationship. I found other people who I can talk to and who get me and like me for the way I am. Um, so I don't really have relationships, even though I want to, with my siblings or my nephews. So it's kind of sad, but that
It's a
for
choice, isn't
me,
it, as well?
it's the choice I made. Because my family, I think if they were just Jehovah's Witnesses and they were good people, I want to say that, it might be different. But my family is so messed up emotionally, and there's so much trauma that it's better for me to stay out of it and just stay on my own path, on my own journey.
And that's given you the opportunity to heal, like as hard as it is to sort of say, okay, I'm better off without my family. Very often
Mm-hmm.
as survivors, it's a truth that we need to have
Yeah.
boundaries, that the only way we can heal is to not have these people in our lives. So
Yeah. As much as I'd love to have a birthday celebration, or I'd love to have, a Thanksgiving or a Christmas with my family, it's not going to happen. I mean, it could, it'd take a big miracle, but I think there's so much other underlying things that it would be an awful experience. So I've come to grips with that.
And did your mum end up staying with your stepfather, and the whole family is still within the Jehovah Witnesses, or has your leaving and kind of getting free?
My leaving did nothing for anybody,
Wow.
except myself.
Yeah.
I have two older brothers who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. But the rest of my family, there's seven of us. So I have my three sisters are all heavily involved. My one brother he's an elder, which kills me because they're the ones who shun people, disfellowship people. They're the ones who tell you, hey, your husband's beating you. What'd you do? Go home. Um, yeah,
Did
so they're all very active.
was your brother like in the firing line from your stepfather as well? Like, did he experience?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
so interesting that he went
They've
through.
all experienced
Well,
it. My one sister, I mean, if she's in my book, my one sister, she's the one who took the brunt of my stepfather. I was very good. I was very good at hiding, and I was very good at being invisible, which I learned early on. Just
survival mode.
and go, and nobody will even just stay under the radar. And I did that for a long time. And my sister is still a Jehovah's Witness. She's very heavily involved. She does a lot of hours. Yeah, yep, yeah. I would think when you're told as a child that whatever happened to you is your fault, what that adult did to you. I, I don't know. I don't know how she can come to grips with that.
Absolutely.
But that's that mindset. It's twisted.
It really is mind control, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
making it easier for these people to stay within
Yeah.
such an abusive environment. Wow.
It is. And at this point, leaving when that's your whole life and you don't know anything else. Because for my sister, she would have been 8. She doesn't know anything else. And she doesn't have any friends outside of the Jehovah's Witnesses. She doesn't have any relationships. So she would lose everything, everything. They
Yeah.
literally would stop talking to her. If they passed her on the street, they would ignore her. Yeah.
And just really breaking down what it is, in your story. I think you do it so well of just breaking down like all of the emotional trauma of getting out of the cult. Just
Mm-hmm.
really highlights how courageous and brave survivors are to actually escape and get out and live their own lives. Like each part of it, I mean, from leaving the cult to going and finding a new place to live, finding new friends, like after all that abuse. It's amazing, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's so much that survivors go through to get free. And yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
would love to ask you as well, Sally, 'cause we have more and more survivors in Australia becoming aware of what the Jehovah's Witnesses are up to, and
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to speak out and sharing their testimonies. And I would love to ask you, like what you would I guess share with someone that is potentially listening to this and is still, having access or, being accessed by members of the cult because they haven't made
Mm-hmm.
that boundary. Like, how did you, I guess, get your mindset right to leave and make that move? Because it's huge. It's literally leaving everything, even though that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's something you don't.
It's huge. Yeah. I had an experience as a young child, and I wear it on my arm as a butterfly,
Mm.
where I asked God to show me if he was real or Jehovah was a lie. And he made it very clear to me that Jehovah was a lie. And I tell people who have left or are thinking about leaving that they have to understand that the Jehovah is not real, that Jehovah has been made up by the leaders, the governing body they call themselves. He has been made up to fit their belief system because if they've been a Jehovah's Witness for a while, they know that the rules change quite a bit. The time for when Armageddon keeps changing. The clothes that you're allowed to wear changes. The doctrine changes. I've never been to a church in my entire life where the doctrine changes. Jehovah's Witnesses are continually changing, but you're still in control. They're still in control of you because you're not allowed to ask questions. So I want you to remember that Jehovah is not God. Jehovah is weak and he cannot hurt you. He cannot save you either because they say that many times. If you go do this, Jehovah's going to hate you. You'll be away from Jehovah and he can't save you. That is not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible does not say that. You are his child and he will search for you if you are lost and he will bring you back. He holds you in his right hand, holds you up, and he doesn't leave you if you make a mistake. He doesn't leave you if something bad happens. He doesn't leave you if you, like I said, if you sin or make a mistake. He's there for you. He's forgiving. He's kind. He's loving. He's the exact opposite of what the Jehovah's Witnesses tell you. So once you come to grips in your head and realize that Jehovah is made up and he's fake, then you can just start opening up to what God is really all about. That's what it was for me. It just took me that mental jump to say, okay, he's one of them fake gods that they made up, and he can't even control himself. He's so weak, he doesn't even know what he's doing. He changes his mind, right? So that would probably be my biggest help,
That's
piece
amazing.
of advice.
Yeah, so really for you, it was this deciding on a spiritual level and
Mm-hmm.
basically breaking away on a spiritual level that allowed you to then make all that happen physically and move away from family, etc.
Yeah, because in my life, my spiritual life was everything. My whole entire life was controlled by that. I mean, and it is now, but it's a positive way.
It
I'm
must.
not fearful. I'm not afraid. I'm not worried about everything happening. I'm not controlled. I can think.
Absolutely. And it's such a difference, like you said, of realizing the false God that's being presented. And look, it happens in a lot of church fronts as well. There's a lot of fake churches
It
out there
does.
that are
I'm
presenting a
not
false
disagreeing
God.
with that.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
just being able to return to the Bible and actually find, the true God and what he can do for you. And I would love to
Mm-hmm.
ask Sally, like, what was your journey with healing from spiritual abuse? Because you've went from, one end where you're being presented with a false God and it was so oppressive. And
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of survivors, it's such a difficult thing, to find God and to trust in a father, like after both the abuse they've had from humans as children, and then also the abuse that, they've potentially had through institutions like you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd love
Yeah,
you.
to trust in a father when you don't have a fatherly figure, that's hard. That's a big one. Because people would say that he's my father, and I'm like, I don't get that. You
Yeah.
know, um, for me though, my first husband he was a Southern Baptist, so that's that's almost cultish too. Um,
Oh no, you've
but
done
I
from one to
got,
another.
I'll tell you, I did. Um, I was very young when I got married because I didn't really have that support. I didn't know. And so I married a man who I thought would be good. He was older than me, and he was religious, so he would go to church. And then it started changing. And one day I came home with my three sons, and he says, "I don't think we're going to have Christmas tree this year." And my flags just went flying. Um,
That would have been a massive
he's
trigger after your
Oh,
childhood.
he was going to a church that was a Reformed church, which means they believe that God has only chosen so many people and nobody else has a chance. Um, but also, I forgot the guy's name. They just did a documentary around him, Bill Gothard, big cult is following that guy. They just did a big expose on this group.
Oh, I'll have to check.
Um, it's called Shiny People or Happy People. So there's a family here called the Duggars, and they had like 19 kids, and they had a show on TV for years. And the oldest son was discovered to be a pedophile, and the family had hidden it and covered it up under the guise of the umbrella of God. And I'm watching this and
Even,
realizing that's what I'm married to.
oh,
And that didn't
Sally,
end
after
well.
everything you'd already been through.
That's what ended the marriage. And that's when I started to get healing with a therapist. I was healing what I thought was uh, my childhood trauma, but I was actually kind of doing a mix of the religious trauma. And I went to a Christian counselor, which was good. And that person encouraged me to write letters to people in my past and to do some things. And that kind of started my journey into writing because I enjoyed it. And writing stories, and I enjoyed it. So that kind of opened up my healing discovery journaling and not sharing it with anybody. Um, I realized I had a knack for telling a story, which I already had. It just was hidden. Um, yeah, so that really opened my eyes up. And I had three little boys, and I got a divorce, and it was like crushing because I wanted this
Family
family.
that you'd never had.
I had the family, but nope, it wasn't right.
But it's so true.
Yeah.
I think until we've done that healing ourselves, it's so easy to
Yeah.
find yourself within a relationship that is unhealthy and, even reflects, the family that you grew up in. I think God, I can definitely put my hand up for that as a survivor, like until you've done the healing yourself.
Yeah.
You think you're running away from something, can you run straight into the same thing?
You go right back to what's familiar.
But
It's just it's human nature. But I encourage people, if that's what you've done, it's okay to say, I have to leave. This isn't working. Don't be ashamed. I can't tell you how many women I've heard who said they were ashamed. They married the wrong person. He was abusive, or, the situation was bad and they were ashamed because they knew better. And it's like, no, I liken cults and bad relationships. You're brainwashed. It's the same thing. You didn't know better. But when you do know better, that's your time to stand up and shine and move and make it better.
Absolutely. And I think, you know,
Yeah.
the church and other religious institutions can put so much stigma on breaking away from a family or breaking away from a
Mm-hmm.
marriage that's abusive. And obviously, like, we're honoring the marriage covenant and it's beautiful. And if it's working, you know, it's an incredible, you know, way to work with God. But there are times, and I've spoken to so many survivors where, like what your family was going through, people were being beaten,
Mm-hmm.
children were being abused, and you know, the church elders were literally sending these women back into horrific situations,
Mm-hmm.
sending the children back into abusive situations. And you know, that's not what the Bible teaches us. That is
That's not what Jesus would
religious
do.
abuse.
I'm pretty sure Jesus would not do that.
That's always a good guideline, isn't it? What would Jesus
I'm
do
pretty
with this
sure
right now?
that man or whoever the abuser was would be thrown off a cliff with a bunch of pigs. You know, I just, there's too many examples. Yeah. So I don't think that God asks you to stay with somebody, um, who is harming you or
Or
your children.
children. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
touched on there, Sally, how writing had become just an incredible tool for you. And today you're a writing coach, and obviously it's your first book anniversary tomorrow. Yeah,
Yay. Yeah.
I would love for you to just share, you know, just something about, you know, what the way writing and expressing yourself has brought healing to your life, because I find with survivors it's such an important way to just start beginning to find your voice again, even if you're not sharing it with anyone yet. It just starts
Correct.
opening those places within ourselves that have been so locked up from being oppressed for so long.
Yeah, well, when I started writing, I wasn't writing for kids. I was writing for myself, and I was just journaling and writing little stories and putting my experiences and my thoughts on paper, um, maybe into characters. I was just creating little characters and just taking what happened to me and putting it on them. Um, but now writing for children, what I'm doing is I'm what's the right word? How do you say this? I'm creating awareness, because you never know who's around you. You don't know what they're going through. And sometimes just being kind to somebody is all they need. I had a lot of people who were kind to me when I was a kid that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. And I can't
Yeah.
help but think if that didn't happen, I would have been so afraid of the outside world, I never would have been able to leave. Um, my novel, The Truth is a Lie, like I said, is a young adult novel. And I really wrote that to bring awareness to the world, to what it really is like to be in a cult. There's a lot of misconceptions that you're mind controlled and that you should know better and you're smart, you shouldn't be in it. But like me, there's a lot of people like me who were born into, you know, they didn't choose it. Um, but it builds awareness as to how to talk to people, how to talk to somebody who's being abused, how to sit in someone else's shoes and learn and listen and not make judgment calls saying you should have known better. Because all of us who are victims, we know, we understand. You didn't choose to be a victim, and it's really hard to get out of being a victim because nobody believes you. You have to have proof, right? You must have done something wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from other women or children. How do you come forward and tell somebody that you're being abused when nobody believes you? And then you have to prove it. Why can't me saying it happened be enough?
Absolutely. And
So that's
the abuse not
what,
being heard and believed as well for survivors
right,
can often be worse than the original trauma. And I know that sounds
right.
intense, but it's because it's the betrayal, you know, and it's the injustice, you know, and that when we get that
Mm-hmm.
sense of injustice, you know, that really leads people into victimhood.
And then you just don't say anything because it's easier.
Absolutely.
Um, but I do write for kids. So I write, my next book that I'm working on is a scary book.
For children.
It's set during Y2K. Oh, kids love scary books. But but I always have some sort of cult goings on in the book. and I make people aware that it's all around us. It's all around us. You need to keep your eyes open and be aware.
How great
So,
for children to start seeing this,
yeah,
start knowing the signs, right?
not knowing the signs and then being bonded together in friendship, and how important that is to have strong friends, because the friends are what are going to help you. The friends are going to be your bond, going to help you, especially for kids. Maybe not so much adults, but for kids.
Yeah, just having those relationships of support is such a crucial thing to the healing process and getting out of a bad situation, I guess, as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the kids in my book tell each other things. And I know as adults that we don't tell each other things. When we're being hurt, we're being abused because we're embarrassed and we're ashamed. And that's what we need to do, though. We need to share it.
Absolutely. It's by the power of our testimonies and the blood of Jesus that we defeat the enemy. And I just, so important that, people like yourself are sharing, your testimony of coming out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and how common this abuse is there, because, it's been covered up for so long. And while it's covered up, there's more people stuck in it suffering. So it's the more us publicly, the more it, gives people just the inspiration that they can get out, like just that hope can move mountains.
And the one of the other really big reasons that I wrote this book was because I was coming across a lot of people who were telling me that Jehovah's Witnesses weren't a cult, and these were Christian people. And I found myself sitting down and explaining to them over and over and over again, this is why they're a cult. They don't believe Jesus is God. They what? They don't? No. And that's usually like, oh, okay. But there's so much other stuff that makes them not a Christian church that I wanted to get the message out in a better way so that people could pick a book up that's a piece of fiction and feels like fiction, and it would be clear to them, and non-Christian people. They could read it and it would be very clear.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's just growing awareness now. Like before, it used to be like the Mormons as well. People didn't realize the Mormons were a cult. And I feel like only now, the Jehovah's Witnesses are starting to get called out and exposed. And we were just chatting before we started, actually, and Sally was saying how the Royal Commission in Australia actually made it to the States, and people, Jehovah's Witnesses, recognised, that institutional abuse related to them as well. So it just shows what speaking out as survivors can do. Like sometimes we don't get the justice we want through the courts and the police, for example, but just raising this awareness and people being able to write books and share their testimonies, that's bringing it's changing lives.
100% agree.
I would love, just before we finish up, Sally, I would love for you to share just where people can find you, because I imagine there would be many survivors, that have writing a book on their list of things to do. And Sally is a survivor and obviously has written her own books and runs mentoring courses for people writing. So great resource.
Yeah, I do. So I know there's a bit of a time difference, but we made it work today, right? So I have a website. I have a website. It's my name. So it's sallylotz.com. It's www.sallylotz.com. And if you're interested in my book, there's actually a link on my book. It's on Amazon, but you can buy it across the globe. So you should be able to get it. And it's paperback and it's Kindle. And then anything on there, like if you want help with writing, I have a contact form. You can contact me. You can email me. I have a free consultation. And I'm doing some things over on Instagram, some Instagram lives that'll stay up there as reels, where I talk about the writing process. So, but I like to hear from you. So.
So awesome. I think anything we can do to encourage people to start sharing their testimonies, like as survivors, because that's how we start healing the world, is getting these truths out there. And Sally, you're an amazing example of that, of just how speaking out, empowers you, but also now it's become your work of empowering other other people as well. So amazing. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that, for everyone listening, that just gives us a bit more of an insight into what's happening within the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I hope that it, brings the inspiration and the strength for more survivors to come forward and speak out, so you can start healing as well. So thank you so much, Sally. Was there anything you wanted to say just to finish up?
Well, I just would say, if you're thinking about leaving, it's baby steps. Just take those baby steps and find something that you're passionate about, and just go towards, like I said, lean towards that, and enjoy it.
I love that. As the word says, choose life, not death. And, find the true God, find that support, and, create a support system around you with people as well. So thank you so much, Sally. Many blessings.
Thank you.